Greetings, rise and shine, brethren. We are the World Global Reset Restoration Network family, comprised of 198 sovereign nations with over 7 billion sovereign principles, being of one mind, one heart, and one spirit, walking together under the divine principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I come to you as a voice in the wilderness to introduce to you a man. No, not just any man, but a man sent by Yah Allah to redeem mankind. Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson, the Adak Chief Justice of the Universal World Court, and who's also known as Yehoshua Mashiach, the Son of Man. The information that you will be receiving in this and other videos you won't get from anywhere else on the planet. Hear the many truths and fulfillment of the laws, judgments, and sentencings from our Creator, Father Yah, as well as the fulfillment of the true interpretation of the Holy Scriptures and books. Now, without further ado, Dr. Hindu I.L. Henderson with his beloved host, Shelley Bowling.
United States of America, if you still classify yourself to be a citizen, welcome to the call. Because you are about to find out that being a part of that organization, being a part of that government, being a part of that system, that you yourself, even representing to be a part of it or even accepting a part of it, is nothing more than a criminal on the planet. And right now, you're being sought by all the righteous nations of the planet. Being sought for annihilation. I'm not going to find no other way of giving it to you than the truth. You're being sought for annihilation. And believe it or not, yes, you're going to be sadly mistaken to believe that people like the Clintons or the people like the Obamas or the people like the Bushes or even the people like the Carters, you're going to find out that they're not trying to save you. You're going to find out that just as they have been as your leaders, they're only out for one particular group. That group is themselves. They have made of themselves a personal group whereby they have sought to protect themselves that they might survive on the planet even at the cost of your life. And this is what now you must be those who will come to realize through recognition of what's taking place. I do know that in the past 8 years, we have been bringing to you a message of truth, believing that most of you by now would have done your research and would have done some would-be small search, whereby you would understand that that nation in which you're living in has already placed you in a position and in a predicament that you have been classified a terrorist. Believe it or not, now the whole world, yes, it has a true belief, a true meaning that they must annihilate annihilate and destroy all of the terrorists off the planet, based upon the fact any terrorist, they say, would be a threat to all nations and to all lands. And whereby, believe it or not, again, as I spoke in what is known as the United Nations call, where all the United Nations are listening, that the one who came up and drafted the resolution that will be against terrorism is Russia itself. Russia is the nation that drew up the resolution that is the resolution that must protect all of the people of the planet from that which is classified to be nothing more than those who would be deemed as terrorists. And believe it or not, yes, your would-be so-called United States of America at that moment in time, being one of the 5, would have been United Nations Security Council members, also agreed. They agreed unanimously. They agreed to that one particular would-be said resolution that was drafted by Russia. That resolution again was Resolution 2199, 2199, and it was to combat terrorism. Again, I say it was unanimously voted upon and approved 12 February 2015. Now here's the thing that everyone must recognize and realize. I know most of you that are listening now, because it is the American call, and saying, what have that got to do with coronavirus? I hear you. You're saying, what have that got to do with my money? What have that got to do with the stimulus paid? What have it got to do with that which is classified to be finances? That which I'm looking for is currency. I need to know how are we going to get back in order where we'll be able to fix our economy and better our economy. What has the so-called Resolution 2199 got to do with me and what I'm trying to do? I can hear you talking. Let me help you out what it's got to do with you and what you're trying to do. It's got everything to do with you, because you're going to be annihilated and you're not going to get anything. That's what's going to happen. You know why? Because you have allowed your nation to classify you as a would-be terrorist. You didn't? I know. You should have paid attention to it. For 8 years, you dealt with being nothing more than a terrorist on the planet. Years. And only now have you still not come to realization that you are now angry with one man on the planet, Donald J. Trump. And believe it or not, right now I would say that 198 nations are angry with Donald J. Trump, but they're not just angry with Donald J. Trump alone. They're angry with everything that Donald J. Trump may represent and everything that represents Donald J. Trump. In other words, they're angry with the United States, not just Donald J. Trump. And even though they might want you to believe that they want someone like Joe Biden in charge in your White House, they only want him for one reason. Because they believe they can slap him around just a little bit. And they believe that he will start crying and screaming like a scalded would-be cat while trying to find its way, clawing straight up someone's dress. They believe they would be able to control him just a lot better, and they believe that it would be real easier to control him than they ever would be able to do with Donald J. Trump. Let me help you out. If you think that Donald J. Trump has given up more than what Barack Obama gave up, let me help you out with that. Yours would be great president of all time, the one that was greater than Lincoln, you would say, the one you would call Barack Hussein Obama. He gave up more than any president in the history of what is classified as the United States of America. He gave up more. Let me help you out. He didn't only give up more, but he even gave you up in the fullness. Let me help you out. This is what he did. He went to a group of people known as SPLC. You never heard of them, have you? Let me help you out. They're called Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center. I told you about them. I told you about them when he was only in the office about a year. After he had been there for 4+ years, I told you about him, and you still re-elected him and put him back in the White House just so he can hold you under the SPLC's rules and laws known as the Southern Poverty Law Center. I know everybody's mad at Mr. Deeds right now because they believe that Mr. Deeds has a lot to do with it, but not even realizing that after Obama was in the office for 4 years, Mr. Deeds got fired as the would-be so-called president of the SPLC. He got fired. Why? Because he was so much trying to hold together the forces in which had even protected the people during the civil rights movement, right? And he was trying to protect them. But he got fired during his time when Barack Hussein Obama was in the White House. He got fired from his position. And so the SPLC began to be ran by those in whom wanted to overthrow the black people of the universe and overthrow the poor people of the universe and overthrow the people of color of the universe. And thereby, that's what you have right now. Again, as I told you, it don't take a rocket scientist to figure out that all they have to do is go and pull up the SPLC, and you realize that during Barack Obama's time, they began to class people, put them in classes, group them to people that they wanted to destroy off the planet. They began to say if a person had any affiliation based upon Christianity, they would be classified as terrorists. They went to the extent of saying that if a person had any affiliation with an all-black group, they would be classified as black nationalists, and thereby they would be classified as something that also would be deemed a terrorist. They went to the extent of saying, if you were of any so-called religious affiliation, you would be classified a terrorist. If you would even be one who would speak out or say anything against the government in a negative form, you would be classified a terrorist. Yes, listen to this. If you had one affiliation with any group such as the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and you was exclusive just one party and you didn't have this bipartisan mind, you had this partisan mind, you would be classified a terrorist. Y'all ain't getting it yet, are you? I know. Listen to me, Americans. You're just not going to get it. You citizens, you voters for the would-be so-called government in which now has you tied to it until your death. Stay with me. I'm just giving you some of it. Listen to this. Why is this so important right now? Why am I telling you this now? Why am I bringing this up? Because let me help you out. This week, on the day of 24th August 2020, well, that wasn't too long ago, was it? A couple of days ago? Yeah, I know. The civil rights, so-called civil rights groups push the back. They want to push the back of those who are of the GOP. They want to destroy the GOP based upon the fact that the GOP is a group known as the so-called would-be Republican Party. Let me tell you why the civil rights groups want to now destroy the Republican Party. You know why? Because the Republican Party put in a lawsuit. They put in a lawsuit on August the 24th. They put one in on August the 23rd. They put one in on the week before even the DNC began to initiate some so-called would-be program of some celebration of something that they call the DNC. Yeah, the Democratic National so-called community of that in which they would have said for a celebration to put a black woman and a white man in the White House as their new representative for their so-called leadership. But at the same time, the Republican Party wasn't busy trying to create a Republican National Committee at the time. They were busy putting a lawsuit in on the SPLC for trying to violate the rights of the people of the universe, and especially those that were classified as people of color. I know you didn't get it. You didn't get the memo. They made sure you didn't get the memo. Let me tell you, here's the catch. You must understand that these civil rights groups and which is pushing that is supposedly a group that's known as the NAACP. And all of them put their names on it. All of them sign in on it as if though they know exactly what they're signing. Let me tell you what it says. It says the Republican National Committee delegates have approved a resolution condemning the SPLC. For they said this is the group that is destroying the blacks and putting a stop to that which is known as true free protesting, open, fair protesting. And they're putting them in a position where they will have to be protesters that will be classified to be criminals. But the Republican committee was too busy trying to protect all of those that were out protesting as those that would have been classified as blacks or any other people of color. Listen what it says. The Republican National Committee delegates approved a resolution condemning the Southern Poverty Law Center, calling the legal advocate group dedicated to fighting so-called extremists a far-left organization with an obvious bias would be so-called world and action plan. And it's true. They do. They have a biased plan. They always have. And if anyone over the last 10 years have truly studied the SPLC, known as the Southern Poverty Law Center, as I told you before, under a man by the name of Brian Levings, if you want to say, he wrote all of the laws and he put everything together, and he did it for Barack Hussein Obama during his time in office. And all these people, they came up in these would-be so-called groups and organizations, and the way they broke it down, they made all the people terrorists. They even classified people to be sovereign citizens. They classified them as being terrorists. You know why? Because they knew as of the year of 1999, they knew that all of those people were placed in the sovereign citizens, but they were not classified as citizens in which they knew. They were classified as sovereign principles. And that's where they made their mistake at. Because they didn't know what they were truly signing off on or what they were truly trying to write off on. And they kind of missed the boat when it came down to being able to destroy those that were known as sovereign principles rather than sovereign citizens or sovereign group. We're not a sovereign group. We're not a group. We're not a sovereign citizen because we're not part of any would-be government. No, we're sovereign principles. And we own the universe. We are those who are leaders of the universe, and we don't need them to tell us exactly what to do or how to do it or when to do it or where to do it. My leadership conferences on the civil would-be of human rights as of August the 25th, 2020, you can understand that the RNC resolution was to save the people, not to destroy the people. But that's not good enough for the Democratic Party. And I'm not supporting either one of them. I'm not part of either one of those groups. I can just assure you that if you're one that's classifying yourself as a Democratic committee, a Democratic party, a Democratic anything, center, Democratic celebrations, anything you're doing democratic right now, I can tell you, is for your own demise. But they've set it up for your demise. Hate crimes and incidents terrorize entire communities, and we are seeing an unprecedented increase in them. These acts are of hate cause people devastating harm and undermine our democracy as people fear for their lives. Yet during the ongoing crisis, they want to come now and believe that the RNC is condemning an organization for doing work that helps community leaders, law enforcement, and state and local governments to combat hate rather than to destroy. And on the other hand, all the DNC wants to do, the Democratic so-called party, is they want to find some way that they can finally get someone to believe that they need to destroy Donald J. Trump when everyone else is having problems of that nature. It takes one man. They want everybody to join some band for some so-called would-be impeachment. They must be really trying to make up for the impeachment that happened to one we know to be William Jefferson Clinton, because he got impeached. And because I guess they have one strike against the would-be so-called Democratic Party of an impeachment, now they want to try to find some way to put at least a few impeachments in the Republican Party. Well, they didn't impeach Richard Nixon. He resigned. Remember that. So they're still trying to make their record equal up to the record in which they believe they now have a bad record. And they do. They have a bad record because they had a bad leader. And that bad leader got impeached. So now they're trying to make themselves have a good record. No, we're not jockeying. We're not representing. No, we're not supporting any other group. We're just letting you know that if you're part of the Democratic Party, you're just as bad. You're worse off than even being in the Republican Party. And we aren't going to tell you to go and join either party for the so-called less of two evils, because we already understand that evil is evil. You can't get the less of evil out of anything that you're doing. They don't understand that the so-called Southern Poverty Law Center is the same one who has been doing all the so-called investigations. They're the ones who have been solely doing nothing more than research on so-called laws to protect people. And at the same time, they have been violating the rights of the people of color now since the time of what would have been deemed at that moment the era of the civil rights movement in which Martin Luther King Jr. himself was a part of. Stay with me, because you haven't gotten the bulk of it. You're only getting parts of it now. And they're all doing it on the ground of hiding the fact that they have already classified and put in a category of all of the melanated people known as black people. They have already done it under the essence of using people that are known as the true Indians of the land, and they have placed them all in a category of being nothing more than terrorists. And believe it or not, as this protesters begin to spark up one place and then it kind of finds itself going out and fizzling out in one area, and it's being paid for. We already know. I know everyone's heard it now. It's being funded by Mr. Sorensen himself. Everybody should already know this is true. Yes, he's funding the protesters, because the greater the protest becomes, the greater the charges become. The greater the charges come, the more people that are charged. They're going to classify it as nothing more than unrest upon the government. Once it's classified unrest upon the government, then they can send in the goons to start destroying everybody based upon the fact of classifying everybody as none other than those in whom they have already placed on a list through the SPLC, known as the Southern Poverty Would-Be So-Called Law Center, as being terrorists. Is anyone hearing what I'm saying? I need you to hear me so you can put yourself in a position where you can save yourself. United Nations Security Council Resolution 2199. The United Nations Security Council Resolution of 2199 was unanimously approved on 12 February 2015 to combat terrorism. It was drafted by Russia. Its legally binding provisions gave the 15 nations of the United Nations Security Council authority to enforce divisions with economy sanctions. The resolution is particularly emphasized the need to combat by all means in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations and international law. Threats to the international peace and security will caused by those that will be classified as terrorist acts. God Almighty. Come on, people. You have got to be a little bit more intelligent than that. You have to be a little bit more of a shining star than that for you to fall for that. That you're going to allow a group of people to place you in a category to be classified as terrorists. So the whole international world will be able to police you up at any given moment. Wow. And they have you set up for it. Because right now, your Black Lives Matter is growing. It's growing by the minute. Right now, all your stars are falling from the sky. Do you understand what I mean when I say all your stars are falling from the sky? Let me help you out. Last time I checked, the majority of your so-called would-be celebrities, whether they were on sports or entertainment, have all find themselves aligning with what is known as Black Lives Matter. And none of them truly understand what this Black Lives Matter movement is all about. They don't even know who's truly funding the Black Lives Matter movement. All they know is that all of them have fallen from the sky whereby they're following it. All of them are aligning themselves with it. All of them now, they come out to their ball games. They come out wearing shirts that Black Lives Matter, which is an act of nothing more to the real world of what is known as a safe world, international world, where terrorism will not be tolerated. It's an act of treason. It's an act of nothing more than presenting yourself to be part of a group, an anti-group, that could even be classified as a black nationalist. Stay with me. You're going to catch it in a minute, because it's obvious that you're not getting it and you don't understand exactly why the Republican Party, if they might be deemed a helpful party at this moment, is trying to protect the people from it. But I can assure you, the Republican Party is not going to be able to do it. No. Because right now, if I'm not mistaken, they tell me that in the polls they're losing. They tell me that they're losing more than by 10 points. If they're losing by more than 10 points, it is almost, they would say, impossible, for there has never been a party that found itself down 10 points with less than 100 days to go into what is known as the election to come back and win. So it's like right now, you're going to lose. You're going to lose the right to be classified as a person that will be classified as an equal on the planet.